is my pleasure this evening to welcome our guest speaker. She's Jeanette Calder. Uh, she's she describes herself as a fully engaged civil society advocate for improved public governance and has been reliably vocal on issues relating to procurement, corruption, and public sector reform. Motivated by first-hand experience of governance challenges in the public sector, she founded the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, JAMP, 6 years ago to promote good stewardship of public resources. As the executive director, Jeanette has led the development of innovative digital tools at www.jampga.org that empower citizens, journalists, and government officials to strengthen accountability systems. Beyond her advocacy work, Jeanette brings a unique perspective as she's actually a trained architect with degrees from the Caribbean School of Architecture and Erasmus University in the Netherlands. As a Jamaican with a strong conviction for the need for citizen empowerment and engagement, she's here tonight to share with us on the topic. And I'm sure you saw the flyer, and so I won't repeat it. But let's say welcome to Jeanette Calder. And Janet, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart. Are you seeing me? Are you hearing me?
Okay, I'm not seeing you yet, but I need to get myself off my screen.
All of the above.
Yes, we're seeing and hearing you.
Okay, great.
I'm seeing Mr. Stewart, so
I'm coming off right now.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Good.
And I think I'm now seeing the flyer, but I'm just that you are seeing me, so I'm not gonna worry about that. And I want to thank Mr. Stewart.
We can see you.
Yes, I just want to thank Mr. I'm sorry?
VP Stewart, can you spotlight her, please? Or give me the host privilege? Yeah. Okay, good.
Go ahead,
Go ahead, yes.
Okay. Right, I was just trying to thank Mr. Stewart. I got a phone call yesterday morning from Mr. Stewart sharing with me that there was a meeting this evening, and notwithstanding perhaps something else on the agenda, based on the topical and the discussions and the robust discussions that he had caught wind of recently, and himself wanting to be an informed citizen but not knowing very much about the NaRRA Bill, sought someone who could perhaps share with the Club of Kingston and the others what exactly the bill is about, what are some of the concerns, and considering that we're on the heels of the debate in the House and the Senate, he asked me yesterday if I wouldn't mind coming in to share some of those thoughts with you. So I just want to thank Mr. Stewart on behalf of the leadership of the Club of Kingston. I have what I'm told is between 30 to 40 minutes. And I'm sure there are Jamaicans here who heard about the record debate in the House last week, Tuesday, which went as far as I think 11 hours. So what is being asked of me certainly is not to cover the bill, but it's really to give you a little bit of insight as to what the bill is and some of the concerns. Now, I want to thank Mr. Stewart for the introduction. As he said, I am the Executive Director of JAMP, the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal. And what that means is that our focus as citizens have been on the issue of accountability. JAMP believes that accountability is really the key to success and development, whether it's our personal lives, whether it's what you saw happening at the pen relays recently. I have no doubt that we cannot achieve what we achieve on the national stage without those athletes taking on personal accountability, the coach holding them to account, the team members holding each other to account. So our message around accountability is a positive one. Most Jamaicans seem, well, it conjures up images of punishment and sanctions, and that has its place. But the point is really that Jamaica is no different as a country from any of us who have succeeded here or, as I said, at the track. We are going to get where we're going as a nation, or maybe I should put it another way. We're not going to get where we can get to as a nation without proper mechanisms of accountability. And so tonight, my lens through which I'll be looking at the bill is really the lens that I think the opposition and several other members of civil society have been looking at it through, and that's accountability. So there are some other issues. I'm not a lawyer, but I am fairly confident that as it relates to the matter of oversight and why it has become such a concern, I would like to share with you this evening what I would consider to be the 7 most concerning issues around the bill, and would be willing, of course, to take any questions thereafter. So I'm just gonna jimmy up my PowerPoint here. I think I already have sharing privileges. Screen 2. If someone could just let me know if you're seeing it in presentation mode, that would be great. Are you?
Yes, we could see.
Thanks, William. Right. So the framing for the presentation is really what has really landed on my heart as I've listened to the presentations in the House. And it's one of trust. It's about power, and it's about public funds. And what you will see below is really what JAMP focuses on, not governance, though many times the media crafts the work that we do in that light. It is strengthening public stewardship and accountability in government. And I really should have added as it relates to public funds and public resources. So that continues to be the focus for the presentation tonight. Now, I just want to still, by way of a little introduction and context, share with you that JAMP's mission is to increase the quantity, quality, and the distribution of public goods and services. Why? Because honestly, the quality of the lives of every single Jamaican here, every business person represented here, is solidly dependent on how well we can provide quality goods and services from the public sector. And a lot of folks do that, but what is our mission? Our mission is to do that by trying to reduce. We're not going to get rid of it, but we really do believe that as citizens leaning in, we can reduce waste, loss, fraud, and corruption in the stewardship of those assets. And one of the things that we provide, I do have to share in that regard, is to create what we call digital online tools for citizens primarily, so that you can begin to take responsibility for those assets that are really yours. We provide these tools to make it easier for you to get information related to accountability and the assets that you own and what government is doing with them. And we also provide easy access to the policymakers and the parliament, so that you can participate in national decision making and holding them to account. There are 6 tools currently, and by the end of this quarter, we should be adding another 3, which would bring it to a total of 9. So I do invite others to come and see what it is that we're doing to try and help citizens to play their part. Now, the conversation this evening is being framed through what I entitled JAMP's core message.
Okay.
I think we have someone that might need to mute. Sorry about that. Let me just try and see if I can help there. Yeah. And JAMP's core message is one I'm sharing because for you to truly appreciate the concerns and for you to truly appreciate why the Club of Kingston feels it is very important that you be here to listen, and not just here, but that you go back to PBCJ and watch the debates, and most certainly tuning at 10 o'clock on Friday to see what the Senate will be saying. This is the reason why. We are all here the owners of the resources and the assets that our anti-corruption bodies or the ministry or the cabinet or any government institution is managing, stewarding, and protecting. We own them. We are the financiers of all public administration. Whatever government is doing with money and our assets, we are financing that process. And we're going to talk about how much money we're going to need for NaRRA, and the fact that if it's loans, if it's bonds, if it's donations, it's our money, and we have a responsibility to pay that back. We are financing everything that they do. And last but by no means least, we are the employers of all public officials, and that includes in the government and in the Parliament of Jamaica. And the last time I checked, if you are if you're paying the salary of someone, it speaks to the control, it speaks to authority, but it certainly speaks to our responsibility that we have. So this is not about sitting on the sidelines and leaving it to civil society organizations and the Senate and the Member of Parliament. You have a responsibility because it's your money, your assets, you finance everything, the decisions that are going to be made, and you employ the persons who are going to be making that decision. So having said that, I just threw here because I was surprised, I must tell you, how hard it was this today to get a sense of how much money are we talking about when we discuss NaRRA. And I just wanted to start here, seeing as we're talking about the fact that we are going to finance it, we're going to pay it back. It's a $6.7 billion US package. That's a little over $1 trillion that we're talking about over what might be or should be 3 years. And as it says here, the multilaterals will be coming together to put this package to help us to rebuild and to recover. So I just thought it was important to give you a sense of how serious the money it is that we're going to be discussing regarding and around NaRRA. Now, what is NaRRA? It's the National Reconstruction, it's really a lovely name, and the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority. Well, we call it the bill because for those of us who might not be certain about the difference between a bill and an act, when the legislation is going through the lawmaking process, it's called a bill. And not until it has been approved by the lower house and the upper house, and then it goes to the representative of our king. Yes, we have a king that has to sign off on all of our legislation. So once the Governor General signs off on this bill, it becomes an act. And so NaRRA would then be the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority Act. But for now, it is a bill. Now, let's just remember the context here. On November the 28th, 2025, a hurricane landed in, I think it was New Hope in Westmoreland. It made landfall, strongest ever to hit Jamaica, and I think in the Western Hemisphere in God knows how long. The damage was catastrophic. The Planning Institute of Jamaica tells us it was about $1.95 trillion. Now, do remember that the budget of Jamaica this year is 1.2. So we're looking at damage that out budgets what we will be spending for the entire year to provide public goods and services. That is huge. They also measure it by saying it's more than half of what the whole of us produce, all the goods and products and services. If you were to price it, put a value on all that we will be doing for, I think this year or maybe it was last year, the gross domestic product, all the goods and services and the products that the country produces, whether in the public sector or the private sector, it came up to a value of a little bit more than half of that. So serious damage was done. And for those who might have heard that trivia, more than 4 times the cost of Gilbert. So major. What is the problem that NaRRA is trying to solve? This new National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, the scale of the operations is going to have to be beyond what we would call the normal government machinery and operations. You have heard the damage. You have seen it. You have had family. You've been down there. The normal administration, public administration, is not what we need. NaRRA is an authority that is going to be responding with some degree of alacrity that is necessary. Speed is essential. Donors, contractors, and communities have been waiting, and we will all agree that we really can't wait any longer. We want to see movement. Most of us are quite distressed that we haven't seen it before. And so we're trying to cut through what is, in all honesty, the normal bureaucratic timelines. And I do believe that that would be absolutely necessary. And the third thing about NaRRA that I want to raise is so much to say, but the third thing I think that stands out is that it's a single coordinating authority that's intended to cut through what we could call the usual interagency delays. I am sure many of us might have heard and would have known of a phrase called the implementation deficit. Jamaica's implementation deficit is distressing. It's disturbing. What I mean by that is we have in the budget money that we put down for what we call recurrent section of the budget. Recurrent, as the word suggests, means we're paying these bills over and over. Light, water, salaries, gasoline, all of these things that we need for government to function every day and every month. But we have capital expenditure, which is really, to put it easy, things that you don't do every month or even every year. Projects, building a bridge, a school, a police station. We have had instances in Jamaica, though these services are well needed, where at the end of the year, government provided money and nothing has been done. The implementation deficit is wide. So the Prime Minister and the Cabinet is concerned about that and is recognizing that we have to speed it up. And one of them is to cut through all the interagency delays, the delays that come from having to be talking to so many agencies. Now, what is NaRRA going to do? Well, it's not sure until the bill is passed. I can't say definitively, but what is anticipated is, as I said before, it's a new statutory body. It's a new agency. And I don't know if you know this, but just about every entity, every institution that is created by government, usually, not always, but usually there's a piece of legislation that creates that institution. Tell you what it is for, what are the rules, what are the procedures now. NaRRA is going to create this new authority. It's going to be headed by a single CEO, and that CEO is going to be appointed, it says, by the Prime Minister. It's going to coordinate and execute all approved reconstruction and resilience projects. However,
The other way.
it
No,
is also important to say,
no, I do this.
Robert, I think you might need to mute. You're coming through. Sorry about that. And by the way, I am doing something I don't usually do. Usually PowerPoints for me is you don't put everything you're gonna say on the slide, but I am already clear and I've already gotten requests for persons who would like the slides to be shared with them. And so it's kind of important that the slides, when you get the copy, stands on its own. And so I'm trying to put more than I typically would on it. So NaRRA, the second point is that it's going to coordinate and it's going to execute all the reconstruction and resilience projects. But what I will also get into, it's also empowered to do much more than projects that are limited to just the recovery of Hurricane Melissa. It's going to fast track any regulatory approvals, so things that you need from NEPA and all the other agencies, utility companies. And it's also going to be able to override the regulators if the cabinet, I would rather say, if the government believes that it is necessary. It is also able to bring in major private investment projects. So outside of just the hurricane recovery projects, there are certain strategic investment projects, interestingly enough, that NaRRA, though it is supposed to really be about recovery from the hurricane, the government has actually put provisions in there that other strategic opportunities that presents itself, NaRRA can also execute them. And last, it's going to be reporting to a minister responsible for reconstruction. Now, the act doesn't say definitively who it is, but most of us have speculated reasonably so. And this is not a bad thing. I'm just saying the speculation is that it will be the Prime Minister of Jamaica. Now, I want to jump straight into the accountability concerns, and there's been a lot of discussion around this one, but one of them that has been raised by the government, and I really want to thank Jamaica Environment Trust and the Jamaicans for Justice for their very early submission, quick o'clock, to the Parliament, sharing the concerns that they have. And I know it has really made a difference in terms of the changes the government has made and even some of the things I'm going to talk about. But one, first of all, is no governing board. I want to share with you that Jamaica has 156 what we call public bodies, and I've put the abbreviations there, but just to give you an idea of them, they're UDC, the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, the Development Bank of Jamaica, Factories Corporation, the Ports Authority, Jamaica Mortgage Bank, the Universal Service Fund, Petrojam, NHD, and as I said, 146. Most of them that I have there are what you call self-financing, but these are big companies. They don't need the taxes. They're operating on their own. They have their own boards. They have fiduciary responsibilities. These boards can be held legally liable for the decisions that they make. I'm sharing this because if you look at these samples that I have here, several of these are public bodies that are responsible for huge sums of money, huge investment. The Prime Minister would say they deal with macro critical projects and programs, meaning if they go wrong, it creates a ripple throughout the economy. They are large, they're huge. I don't see them as taking on less of a responsibility than NaRRA is. And part of the point that we're making is that each and every one of them have what you call a governing board. The government of Jamaica has an entire document called wow, what is that? Not sure. 1 second. That's a bit odd. I want to ask you to excuse that. I'm not quite sure what caused that. But the government of Jamaica has an entire document known as the Corporate Governance Framework of 2012, which sets out exactly how and why we need governing boards, and we don't use them. Let me put it another way. We need those governing boards, and exactly as that document says, to increase transparency, probity, and effectiveness in the decision making and the execution of the responsibilities of these entities. So one of the questions is, if this has been good enough, if this document, which is a very detailed document, steering the boards and the directors as to how they can best serve these companies and best serve Jamaica, enabling them to meet their objectives. The big question we're asking is, why is it that NaRRA, that will be executing projects that are as sizable as these, a significant budget, why wouldn't the government choose to have a board that provides the kind of governance oversight that will enable transparency, probity, efficiency in the decision making? NaRRA instead has a single CEO appointed by the Prime Minister, and I want you to note carefully, with an advisory committee that may be appointed by the minister. Now, I would like to think that maybe there are some lawyers in the room that the Q&A can explain may, but we don't need to be a lawyer to understand. The minister may and the minister may not. And maybe if he does for the first year, you can easily also recall them. Therein lies the concern. One person in the day-to-day management controlling billions of dollars. Remember I said this is a $1 trillion package coming in from the multilaterals. Now, what this means is that the CEO can accept, modify, or ignore entirely what an advisory committee is saying. The advisory committee has no legal power. It cannot block. It cannot reverse any decision if it's concerned about a procurement decision, if it's concerned about value for money. It never has to meet because nothing in law demands that it does so. And if its advice is ignored, no law has been broken. That is one of the concerns. I'll leave it at that and I can elaborate a little later on. Now, what the government has been comparing this advisory board to is the fact that Jamaica has executive agencies, not only 156 public bodies, but we have executive agencies. So I just pulled out of the Executive Agencies Act some examples of what those institutions look like. And we have the Administrator General's Department, JIS, MIND, NEPA, the National Land Agency, the Registrar General's Department, the Office of the Registrar of Companies, the Works Agency, and I think NaRRA has been added. Now, you can tell me in the Q&A, but I'm going to ask a question, and I hope I'll remember to ask you what your answer was. Do you see a difference? The government is basically saying that these executive agencies were created, as the name suggests, executive agencies to execute, to move a little bit more quickly than perhaps the public bodies can. But I'm going to ask you to be observant and take a look at the type of entities that the government in, I think, 2001, when this was passed, what are the types of entities? What are the types of work that they do when you compare them to, say, the public bodies that I shared a while ago, or say the work that a NaRRA is supposed to do? Can you see a difference as to why perhaps an advisory committee might not be a high-risk decision, as opposed to having a governance board with responsibilities, can hold a CEO to account, can disagree with a CEO, can reverse his decision, and can fire him, hold him to account? With the exception of the National Works Agency, there's something in common with all of the rest of them that I'd like you to consider. Now, the second gap is what we call, PIMS, the exemption of PIMS. Now, PIMS, I think, was in 2019. It came into being. It's the Public Investment Management System, and it was added to the FAA Act. Now, the FAA Act, I should have written it out here, is the Financial Administration and Audit Act. I'm trying to figure out, folks, and I'm really sorry. Just give me a minute. It's really quite disturbing to, I can't figure out. I've never seen this before, this marking up of this slide, but
Somebody's
bear
tampering
with
with
us. Bear with us. Yeah, bear with me. It's kind of odd. Right, so the PIMS is the Public Investment Management System, and basically this is something that was put in place by the government of Jamaica. Excellent policy by this administration. I think it was in 2019. But the bottom line is that Jamaica was executing a lot of projects, in particular infrastructure projects, where the poor planning, poor feasibility, next to no feasibility, no value for money at the end of the day, several white elephants, and the decision was taken with external help to create this management system where certain kind of analyses and risk assessments would be done to assure the government of Jamaica before we start down the road that this is a good decision. One of the things that NaRRA will not be subjected to is this process. The Section 26 explicitly says that NaRRA will be exempted from PIMS. And what that means, as it says here, is that there's no pre-commitment appraisal before public funds are committed or spent. Now, please bear in mind, as I said earlier, that NaRRA will not only be taking care of projects that are dealing specifically with the response and recovery of the hurricane, but there are other projects that Cabinet can designate as a special strategic project. I'm hearing, for example, that the new parliamentary building might be one. I don't know. But it would also mean that these would also be exempt from something as important as PIMS. Now, we can have a discussion as to whether or not PIMS would slow anything down. But I'm sharing with you an accountability concern because this has to do with value for our money and ensuring that we don't take on projects that end up being wasted. Now, the step-in orders is another concern from an accountability standpoint. It is not true for those who have been saying that NaRRA is going to bypass the government regulators. That's not true. It doesn't bypass them, but it does control them. And what I mean by that is, let's say if NEPA has been given an approval for a new bridge, a new road, the CEO or cabinet, I need to double check, but the bottom line is that this regulatory agency or any other can be given a deadline as to when they need to respond, as to whether or not it's going to be a reasonable deadline, time enough for them to do the work they need to do and properly give a technical advice. I don't know. But the point is that if the deadline passes, there's a step-in order which allows for the bypassing at this point of whatever it is that that regulatory agency would have said, and the decision on that permit and that planning approval can now actually be issued by NaRRA. If there is a disagreement by the minister, by the CEO with what the regulatory agencies are saying, not bypass them, but if you disagree with their decision, you can replace that decision entirely. There is no requirement under this legislation if there is a decision to bypass the technical advice, the planning advice of any agency. There is no requirement to let the public know that this is the case. There is no explicit right for any affected community to have a chance to be heard. And there is no express statement that allows for what we call a judicial review. And broadly explained, judicial review is government makes a decision, any institution on behalf of the government, and you believe that your right has been breached or violated or impacted, you have an opportunity to go before the court and ask the court to review the decision that the government has made. There's nothing that expressly says that it should be done, and it is the view that there is no harm in putting in a provision such as this, such as that. Now, I'm gonna get into it a little bit, but I am teasing you a little bit to recall that only 4 days ago, with the Dry Harbor decision, we had something very similar happening, and the Constitutional Court came in and basically took a position that says the government could, well, I don't want to preempt myself, but the bottom line is, the point I want to make at this stage is that this step-in order could actually be embedding in law the very thing that the Constitutional Court judgment 4 days ago in Dry Harbor said shouldn't be done, couldn't be done, and there was no basis on which it ought to have been done. But don't forget this now. This is some 5 years ago. Citizens have a right to go to court, they have a right to representation, but it takes what? A lot of money and a lot of time. So we would like to see something placed in the legislation that provides that kind of protection. Gap number 4, and I find this particularly disturbing, and I don't know if I've missed it, but I haven't heard what the government has to say about this in particular. The CEO has a clause that will indemnify him or her against any personal liability for the decisions that they have made. Now, that goes against one of the basic accountability mechanisms in government called a surcharge, whereby if any decisions that you have taken results in any loss to the public purse, you actually can be asked to pay it back by the Ministry of Finance. Not only that, you should be able to even lose your job, be fined, sent to prison, I don't know. But the CEO in this case, the law has expressly indemnified them against any personal liability for any decisions the legislation says has been made in good faith. Now, what does that mean? Good faith means that if I, as a CEO, can simply say that I meant well, I had the best interest of, this particular constituency at heart when I made this decision, that's it. Now, wow, what a generous defense that is. And I cannot find anything in government that has ever been done before that would allow for this kind of a generous lack of accountability. So gross negligence on the part of the CEO, recklessness, no board is there to challenge a decision that he has made. Remember that. You don't have any audit committees in place. Remember that. And if without all of those other accountability mechanisms not in place, if he makes a decision that costs us money, excuse me, guys, my dogs are at it a bit, my apologies. If a decision is made that ends up in, I could say, structural failure of a bridge, procurement decision that goes horribly wrong, we lose value for money, there is no accountability pointing back to the person who actually makes that decision. That is disturbing. Gap number 5 deals with the issue of secrecy and whistleblower. Now, I want you to just picture for a minute the fact that we're going through a lot of decisions made by the government that removes a lot of checks and balances that we would typically have in government, yes? And while we're in the process of removing that, you would think what you would want to do is to say to the people of Jamaica, listen, not only are we in a low trust environment, but yes, we have never passed the 50% mark in the corruption perception index. Yes, we have seen the Auditor General's reports time after time after time demonstrating that laws are flagrantly disregarded in Jamaica, in particular, the Public Procurement Act, with no accountability. And in spite of all of that, I would think that a government would say to Jamaica, we understand the environment, we understand the low trust, we understand that we have not done the best we could by you in terms of accountability. So therefore, we are going to create then an environment in this authority, in this agency, that will encourage public officials, if they see misconduct, if they see malfeasance, that they have extra protection in light of the fact that we are removing all of these checks and balances. No, what we have in section 14 is a criminal offense of up to $1 million fine or a year in prison for any NaRRA officer who discloses documents obtained in the course of their duties. The only protection that we see here is a quote. It says, nothing prevents disclosure permitted under any other law. Now, we do have another law called the Protected Disclosures Act, the Whistleblower Act. That's a legislation the government has been reviewing now, I think, for probably 4 years. Reviewing because it is in need of review. Reviewing because there are several weaknesses in the act. It's really not serving that purpose. And yet, in spite of that, they're referring us to, well, if there's another act that's out there that can help you, fine, you're good to go. But we don't think that's enough. And I'll share with you very quickly here why. Section 14.1 makes it very broad. It says that every NaRRA officer must treat all documents obtained in the course of their duties as secret and confidential. And let me bring in a real-to-life case study to show you why this is concerning and this is not going to serve our best interest. Currently in the Integrity Commissions Act, 56.1 has a very similar clause, 56.1 I believe it is, or 56.3, forgive me, has a very, very, very similar clause that says anybody, any officer of the Integrity Commission that is responsibility for the administration of the, the objectives of the Integrity Commission must hold as secret and confidential. And it lists out all the things that they must hold as secret and confidential. What that has meant to everyone who is listening is that a wonderful best practice that the Jamaican government has had for 14 years, where Mr. Greg Christie, as the Contractor General, started something which every citizen would appreciate. Every contract above, it started at $250,000, but every contract above $500,000, Mr. Christie insisted that every ministry, department, and agency had to report to the Contractor General, now the Integrity Commission, and give us the details of that contract. Who got the contract, when, how, what is it for, how much money, how many people tendered. And that is on a database that anybody can access. Anybody who wants to see who got the contract, I didn't get it, could see it. The Jamaican public could see how our money is flowing from the public coffers to the private. Best practice extraordinaire. That stopped in 2020 as a result of a piece of legislation exactly like this that required things to be secret and confidential. So the Integrity Commission said, well, if everything is to be secret and confidential, we can't tell Jamaica about this. And one of the best examples of transparency and a practicing government that is there to combat corruption has been denied the government, the people of Jamaica for the last 5 years, simply because of a clause just such as that. So what I'm saying to you is that when an officer of NaRRA learns that, well, yes, you can speak because there's some legislation out there like the Whistleblowers Act that say you can, but that person might not be sure because this says all things is secret and confidential. And you said to yourself, but boy, if I see this happening and I go call the Integrity Commissioner or the Auditor General, man, you know how Jamaica stay. Me not trouble in a $1 million fine here. What is that official going to do? Pull back. So what JAMP is saying, JET is saying, JFJ is saying, and I believe the opposition is saying is, can we have something in the legislation that actually, in light of all the accountability mechanisms that are not there, can we put something in that will encourage, reinforce, undergird public officials if they have a concern? And right now, this does not. Gap 6 of 7, so I'm almost done, is that we do not have an independent multi-stakeholder oversight body. And I'm going to pull back a bit to say, picture this. It's 2 weeks after Hurricane Melissa. Donations are pouring in. Bless God for all that all the persons, all the individuals, celebrities, everybody, foundations who responded. And one of the questions that Jamaicans had, the media had, about the committee that was being set up to deal with the immediate response was, where is the oversight? It's a question we kept asking. It seemed quite reasonable. Where's the oversight? We never really got a satisfactory answer. That's in my view. No oppositions were sitting on these committees. No civil society groups were there. Now we're creating NaRRA. We are codifying. We don't just have a little committee now. We're codifying. We're putting this thing in law. And yet we're still not considering a multi-stakeholder oversight body. Now, folks are going to say, Ms. Calder, that I go slow down things. That is not true. But let me point out to you something that is of concern regarding the Jamaica Disaster Risk Management Act. We currently have such a legislation. I did not know this until after Melissa, from 2015. And one of the things that it says in this act is that there is a council of 38 members, including the leader of opposition, civil society, private sector, community organizations. Please remember, this is a legislation that both sides of the House sat down, looked at, and crafted to respond to a disaster. And in 2015, most of the folks are still in the House today. They did not think that 38 people meeting to discuss, to support the government's response would have caused a delay. I would like to ask what has happened between 2015 and now. NaRRA doesn't reference this existing act any at all, which is the act that's for what? Disaster risk management. Does not require the CEO to report to this council. By the way, I believe the Prime Minister is the head of the council. By law, it ought to be, I think, the Minister of Local Government, but the Minister of Local Government can delegate it, and I think it was delegated to the Prime Minister. So this new act doesn't reference the preceding act. It doesn't require the CEO to report to it, and it has assigned no role whatsoever to the council or the committee that exists. I haven't had a chance as yet to see if it contradicts it in any way, but I'm flagging this as a concern. Now, last of number 7 is the open-ended mandate. There's this thing that's called mission creep. JAMP as an organization has to look out for it. All of them, all organizations do. You start out, you're very clear as to what your responsibilities are, what your objectives are, but as time passes and circumstances pass and ideas come in, you begin to drift. And one of the reasons we have a concern is because NaRRA does not have what you call a dissolution date. It doesn't dissolve. What I mean by that is most of these organizations or entities that are set up in other countries, the one that the government has been quoting a lot is the one in New Zealand. I think the one in New Zealand had a 3 or 5 years that it allowed a government to execute projects in this abnormal fashion. It cannot continue in perpetuity. There has to be a period. We recognize why there is need for what we call abnormality, and an anomalous situation because of the emergency. But you can use your imagination. If we do not put an end date on something like this, I'm sure you can figure out what that concern would be. I also want to point you back again to the fact that NaRRA can also do projects outside of Hurricane Melissa responses. So if you don't put an end date, which project would not be able to be tucked under this in an environment that we have to admit is short of accountability? Now, I just want to point out to you folks before I wrap up this. I think it's important. A lot of what I said is theory. I just want to bring two real-to-life case studies to show you that these concerns are real. They are genuine. They are not just theoretical concerns about what if. Now, that same Disaster Risk Management Act creates a disaster risk management fund, because if you're going to respond to an emergency of a disaster kind of proportions, you need billions of dollars. So, of course, the Parliament of Jamaica, I keep saying it, this Parliament makes good laws. This law recognized that we're going to need a fund. And so it does have that fund institutionalized, embedded rather in the act, and a committee to oversee that fund. It says in the act that the fund must exist between 7 and 10 members. And you notice who they include as a must? Chartered accountants by the Institute of Chartered Accountants by Jamaica. And whatever that fund is doing, whatever monies are coming out of that fund, it has to be published in the Gazette. The people of Jamaica must know how much money coming out of the fund. It's our money. The committee has to meet a minimum of once every 2 months with a quorum of 5, and minutes must be kept in proper form. And last, but very importantly, no money is to be withdrawn unless it is authorized by who? The Financial Secretary, after consultation with the fund committee. Why is this relevant? Because only 2 months ago, do remember that the Auditor General is doing what we call a real-time audit of the hurricane response so far. And what the first report from the Auditor General told us is that the committee was appointed in September. The last functioning committee was appointed in September 2020. And during its entire 3-year tenure, it has only met twice. The inaugural meeting and once after that. That's 2020. This is 2025. The committee's tenure expired in September of 2023. And as of December 2025, the AG was saying more than 2 years later, there is no evidence of any new appointments. Now, the first thing, if we have some smart cookies in the room, and I know we do, I think you'd be saying, but hold on, Jeanette, 2023, but we had a massive hurricane in 2024, Beryl. And before this disaster, we thought that was just the worst thing we could have ever experienced since Gilbert. And you mean to tell me that the Disaster Risk Management Committee never met, the council? And you mean to tell me that, what? Well, here's what the Auditor General went on to tell you. $350 million was withdrawn without the legally required consultation, according to Section 4 of that act, which says that no money can be withdrawn from the fund unless it is authorized by the Financial Secretary. $350 million. So it happened last year in 2024 with the response to Beryl, and so far with response to this disaster, $350 million. The law is broken. This has been said. Has anybody heard any hue and cry? Is anybody being held to account for that? The answer is no. I'm going to skip this in the interest of time, but this was basically a very small clip with the business leader of the House, MP Floyd Greens, stating that Jamaica was following the model of New Zealand. It's important just to share with you, because you're going to be hearing more about New Zealand, and it's important for me to share with you what MP Green has not told you. New Zealand had a fixed 5-year life, remember? NaRRA does not. And there was a review period. NaRRA does not have that. New Zealand instituted a statutory community forum with 20 leaders from the area of Greater Christchurch, which had experienced a disaster. Built into the legislation, it was not something that was discretionary on the part of the minister or the CEO. It's not going to be done at the minister's pleasure. It was a permanent structured mechanism for community voices to reach into the decision-making process. What else did MP Green not tell you? That it had a cross-party parliamentary forum. Cross-party, bipartisan parliament, all MPs from Christchurch, every member of parliament representing the affected area had a seat at the table. I don't need to explain why it would be important to have those who are down there hearing what is happening, sitting at the table. All orders were gazetted and tabled in the parliament within 6 sitting days. That's not there in the NaRRA. And final, subject to where we call it the Access to Information Act. But there were no exemptions. There was something embedded in the law reminding the people that you can ask questions and you must get answers under their Freedom of Access to Information Act. And finally, the other real case study I have to share with you before we go is Dry Harbor. I really don't have the time to go into it, so I can touch it in the Q&A, but this is basically a slide showing you the difference between, not showing you the difference, recounting what took place under the Dry Harbor case and how it strikes some parallels with NaRRA and the provisions that are in NaRRA, the powers that are in NaRRA are reminiscent of the decision that the Prime Minister made when it struck down the decision of a regulatory agency concerning Dry Harbor. Do look at this judgment, because the concern that the other civil society groups, I do believe the opposition and JAMP is saying, is that the government, based on how NaRRA is written now, has really taken on, arrogated, as you would say, certain powers unto itself. That the very thing that they did in Dry Harbor is what the law is now saying they can do. So the very thing a constitutional court says, no. Here is why we don't think that the Prime Minister should have struck down what the regulators said. He didn't provide any justification. It's the same way in NaRRA. The regulatory agencies can eventually be bypassed. The decisions can be reversed, and there's nothing saying that a justification needs to be given. Folks, this is really what is my last slide. Bear with me here because this is important. I don't have the time to play the clip in the House where Dr. Tufton was making the case that we don't have to worry about the accountability mechanisms that have been removed, because Jamaica exists within an accountability framework that can take care of all of that. The Jamaican government, successive governments and parliaments have done an exemplary job in creating for the people of Jamaica a very strong and robust accountability framework. It's good. However, creating it and enforcing it, two completely different things. And what this last slide is telling you is that that accountability framework that the government is trumpeting and reassuring you on cannot be banked on. The Public Procurement Act was codified in 2015, operationalized with regulations in 2018. Every single year without fail, the Auditor General, just one report, the Auditor General, just one institution, the Auditor General points to egregious and blatant disregard for the Public Procurement Act. And folks, remember this. The highest risk of activity or the highest risk of corruption, if you're looking for a government activity, is public procurement. In any country, it is the same in Jamaica. When you're thinking about where the corruption problem lies, it is procurement. Customs is second and it's way behind. So it should concern you that there is no evidence of accountability for the last year for any single soul who has breached this act. The second one I want to point out to is public bodies. Right now, they're saying that, yeah, this entity NaRRA will report to the parliament. Parliament will get reports. Well, I'm here to share with you that the Cabinet Office has a report that tells you that 164 public bodies, only 8 are current in providing Parliament, which is really you, the people, with reports as to what have they done, what is their performance, how them spend your money. As you can see there are some that haven't reported for 30 years, 20 years. What has happened? And last, you will recall JAMP 2 years ago, sharing with the public that there are some 11 ministries, departments, and agencies that have been allocated $3 billion. Sorry, $3 trillion. That's $3,000 billion. And the Auditor General is still waiting to learn what has been done, how that money has been spent, and I mean a red cent. I'm happy to tell you that the government of Jamaica has responded. The Office of Prime Minister is no longer delinquent. The Ministry of Health was 10 years behind, some $695 billion. They have moved tremendously, that needle. Same too for the Ministry of Education. But that, I think, only happened because this organization, JAMP, decided it was going to come out and take the shellacking, which we got, for simply saying the laws were not being followed. and people need to be held to account. So I thank you very much for the time. This is the best I could do. I'm sure I went over. I apologize for that, but I think in light of the $1 trillion that's going to be spent and the concerns that we have, I hope it was time well spent, and I'll be willing to answer any questions regarding what I have shared. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Calder. Before we move to the next section, I'm going to ask for a motion for an extension for the meeting, extension of time for the meeting.
I move for extension.
Seconded.
Grateful.
Okay. Thank you, President Zuri. Well, Ms. Calder, that was really eye-opening. You know, as I said to you, I had just seen a clip. I must admit, and I give them credit, it was on all angles. And after I saw the clip, I went onto, One Spot Media and looked at the whole program. And I said to myself, this can't be right. You know, this is just an incomplete act. And then it was very noticeable that the representative from the PNP and the representative from their views their approach was quite different. So I'm really happy that, I found you and you have come to shed some light on it, and I have a lot of things to read, but I'm quite willing to let the other people go first. The first one is, what does the government say when we say, then why doesn't it have a board? That's the basic one. What have they said? They must have said something.
Yes. What I think what I recall seeing today, and I'm sure there are more things that have been said than that, but there's no better reference than my Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has shared the example of the executive agencies, and I was sharing it before, that executive agencies in Jamaica do not have what we call corporate governance boards, as the public bodies do. They really more have an advisory board. And I think MOCA has also been used as one example to say, look, and I mean, I must tell you, the government of Jamaica has really been commendably resourcing MOCA. MOCA just a couple of years ago was getting a $500 million. They're now at almost 1.6 billion. So MOCA is an example of an entity that's spending a lot of money like NaRRA will be. But what I'm asking, what the Prime Minister was saying is that NaRRA, and I think I'm quoting here, NaRRA will not be making policy. NaRRA is only being asked to do one thing and one thing only: execute these projects. No. So the Prime Minister is saying, so it doesn't need a governance board for that. It just needs advice. My question is this: can the Prime Minister break down for us when the Prime Minister says it's just one thing, and that's executing? I'm an architect, and at my most burdensome time in the ministry, there were 21 different projects that I was handling at different stages of execution. Some were dormant, some were active, some were in the middle. Executing a huge infrastructure project, much more many, involves a lot of things, and it's a very complex undertaking. And as I said before, massive procurement, spending of government funds. So the question is, what is the use of an advisory committee if that advisory committee, first of all, it doesn't have to be put in place, and a CEO doesn't have to listen to it? When you're dealing with a governance board, that governance board makes decisions very differently, because that board can be held liable for decisions that are being made. Now, if you can be held liable, you're going to approach decision making very differently. So that's the quickest answer that I can give. One, they think executing is a very simple, straightforward thing. And why would you need anything more than an advisory board? I disagree. Executing those projects is a massive undertaking, high risk, with power concentrated in one person. That is when you need oversight. And oversight doesn't have to slow down. Let us keep in mind that the major concern I have, the opposition has, and everybody have, is speed. We want this thing to move fast. But I am not in agreement with the government that oversight means. As you can see with the New Zealand model, there was oversight. There was the opposition in play. the community was also in play, and yet it didn't slow them down. So I don't accept the argument that the Prime Minister has put forward.
Okay, I see one hand up. Not
My
surprised.
hand,
Yes,
hi
Bobby, I see.
Jeanette, excellent presentation as usual.
Thank
And
you.
I
Thank
agree
you,
with
Robert.
usual in most of what you say. But just to play a little devil's advocate here,
Sure.
could the Prime Minister think that boards are part of the bureaucracy that is hindering organizations? I mean, we have seen the board at UHWI, the boards at Petrojam, the boards at NHT, the boards at several others haven't really prevented massive corruption or massive overruns. And so maybe in the minds of some persons, boards are not necessary. Could that be a possible reason why they are thinking this way?
Not one that he has said in so many words, but if the Prime Minister were to, this is what Jeanette's response would be. We have case studies in Jamaica of which I am extraordinarily proud. Pika used to be one of those places that, boy, people never want to think about going to because you have to go let off. I was in construction, as I shared with you, Robert, so I can remember how developers would complain to me about the titling process, and they would admit how much money they are paying per title. Because if you can't get a title out, your profits are literally dwindling when you're a developer. And I can recall the housing agency of Jamaica. It was the NHDC when I was in government. And NHDC was just scandal after scandal after scandal. Mr. Winter, I recall when the Prime Minister of Jamaica said a couple of years ago in his first administration, after I think its first scandal, I'm just going to dissolve that agency. And I remember the then Minister of Housing, Minister Chang, saying, Prime Minister, give me a chance. And you know what that minister did? Put together a board. Same thing for PICA. Same thing. You had somebody who came in to the registrar of titles with one idea. Same staff in all cases. Same staff. Nobody changed. Management.
But PICA
And
doesn't have a board though.
turned each and every one of those agencies around. So,
Right.
in as much as the Prime Minister can point to those case
Right.
studies, we can point to some. Look at the National Health Fund, turned it around.
True,
So
but
the
well, I'm not so
bottom
sure
line
about
then,
National Health Fund
well,
and PICA doesn't have a board. PICA still
well,
has
no,
an
no, no, no.
advisory board.
Look at the bigger. Look at the. Okay, we can certainly say that's the case for HAJ.
I agree with HAJ. I agree with
So
HAJ,
I
but
am basically
I'm not so
saying they
sure
are.
about NHF. NHF is looks good because of a lot of money passing through, but NHF
No, I
has a lot to be
disagree.
desired.
I'm not gonna detain us too long on this, Robert, but
Okay.
I totally disagree with you with HAJ. There's a reason why they have been winning
No,
public
I
sector.
agree with HA. I agree with HAJ. I agree
Yeah,
with HAJ.
yeah,
I
yeah,
personally
yeah.
agree with HAJ. I think
But
HAJ
I will
has
say
done
at the
well.
end of the day, it is good management. And I would simply say finding good managers. And I believe Dr. Nigel Clark, one of the last things he did before he left was to create a new provisions in the PBMA Act to deal with the problem with how board members are selected. So I am putting it to you that having only recently seen the government come up with a decision that it is who we're putting on boards and the competencies that they have is the problem. I am of the view, Robert, that if you put a good board in place for NaRRA, it is going to serve the Jamaican people well without slowing down the process.
I agree with you too, but on the other hand, they will say that PICA is performing well without a board. So, you can show. I'm just playing devil's
We can
advocate again.
find some. We can find some in the case. But at the end of the day, Robert, here is what I would close
But I
this up
do agree with
saying.
everything you're saying, though.
None of my arguments hang on one suggestion. It's
No.
the whole.
Yeah,
So
I
if
agree with
you,
everything you've
yes,
said.
right.
All
So
the
if you
points,
pull
all the
everything
points are
together,
made. You have
yeah.
made it very, very well.
But I take your point that you can have advisory boards that do well. I believe though that if we had
I
a
don't believe
strong,
in advisory boards, tell the truth. They're a
well, I'm
total
happy to
waste of
hear.
time.
Well, we can move on then. I can tell the Prime Minister, you said
Yeah,
that as an
total. I
expert.
know. Mr. Shaw wanted to get rid of them, rid of all the executive agencies because
Yeah.
all of them are a problem.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I'll quote you on that, Robert, that you as an expert in this matter says that the executive agencies, those advisory boards, not serving them. So,
Not serving any purpose.
all right. Is there another question?
Yes. I
Well,
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Thank
Yeah.
you for your presentation.
You're
Let me
welcome.
ask a question. What impact will NaRRA have on PPC, Public Procurement Commission?
That's an excellent question. I am going to say absolutely none. I believe, considering the provisions that are there that really do bypass those procurement laws. And let me be fair, there is another legislation. I think the Public Procurement Act itself, Desmond, empowers the Ministry of Finance. Once he declares, or she, in this case, Mrs. Williams, MP Williams, once they identify a project as being of national significance, there is a clause now in the Public Procurement Act that allows the government to bypass, literally it says, all procurement acts. Now, to the credit of the government, I am not seeing where that has ever been abused. Desmond, it has only been utilized once since the legislation was passed, which says to me the government is utilizing that power quite judiciously. I think the Montego Bay bypass is the only time where the government utilized that. But everything that I've seen in NaRRA suggests that those procurement laws are not, they can be bypassed. And therefore, what is the point of a public procurement commission if those laws or those thresholds? So, for example, just that everybody's staying with us, Desmond, the Public Procurement Act now has certain approval thresholds. So some things just don't go to the PPC. I don't remember what the figure is now. I don't know if it's 30 million. Don't quote me on that. Certain procurements only go when it is above a certain amount. Now, just about everything that NaRRA is going to be doing is going to be, would have warranted the PPC's input. But the answer, Desmond, is no. They will not be utilizing the commission under this legislation. I think I'm running.
60
Thank you.
million.
Thank you.
For those who are asking, this is being recorded and it will be on YouTube. It will be on our channel, which is the KCOK YouTube channel. So don't worry about getting access to the meeting this evening. Okay. Janet, kind of this thing about the indemnity.
Yes, of the CEO.
Can you come up with some pros and some cons as to why it may be a good thing? In other words, what are both sides of the story to have something like that?
I don't know. I suppose the good side, I suppose what the government is thinking is you're going at a certain pace, you mean well, but it's hard to go at a pace like this and not really end up making mistakes. It's very hard. So I think the government is anticipating that errors are going to be made. And whether or not it is fair to saddle a CEO where it's almost a given that errors are going to be made if you have really removed so much from the process that's in the law in the first place to protect her, and all these guardrails and safeguards are gone. So I don't know any CEO maybe who would want such a job if perhaps such an indemnification clause is not there. So I think that is perhaps what the government is thinking. There's some degree of fairness to the CEO. It is too wide, it is too broad. I think we should be able to come up with something that still holds the CEO to account, other than saying if he's acting in good faith, then we'll give him a pass on this. I'm sorry, I can't come up with anything better than that. But I would simply say that it's not good enough. There has to be accountability for the spending of $1 trillion. I don't know.
But let me ask you something. Some of these are going to be obviously construction projects. And you're an architect, you understand that.
Mostly.
I have an engineering background as well. So
Yeah.
I kind of understand how some of these things work. But so there must be a machinery, that is going to do the work. I mean, NaRRA is not a construction company.
On its own. No.
So tell me how does it fill in?
I'm not sure I understand the question though.
No, I'm saying there has to be a machinery which is going to do the work, the implementation.
Yes.
So I'm not sure. In other words, if you have a project to do,
Right.
there has to be a contractor, somebody, there has to be a bill of quantities, there has to be something else.
Right.
So where does what is NaRRA really gonna say yes or no to?
Well, none of those processes change. I don't know if there are going to be tenders. I doubt they are going to be. Perhaps for the ones that are not related to the hurricane, I would imagine, I would hope, but it doesn't have to be. But I'm just saying that developers are going to be identified. If it's an emergency situation, which it is, and we're moving with alacrity, we are not going to have a competitive scenario. And there are models and there are tools that are available to our government, where you can still assess value for money outside of a tender process. I don't
Yeah.
know that that is going to be done. So at the end of the day, nothing changes. You're going to identify a developer, you're going to identify a contractor, and you're going to execute a project in the same way that you would now, other than the fact that you do not have what? You don't have PIMS in place, which is that management system that would do all the assessment, the cost benefit analyses that would say to the government, I don't really think this is going to work, Or here is another project that is doing something similar. That's another thing that PIMS used to do. Government would be doing two projects, they're kind of similar. Nobody knew. PIMS was created so that there would be an entity having a wholesome view of government to say, hold on, but we're kind of doing the same thing there, we're kind of doing the same thing there. That is out of the way. But
This,
other than that, all that would take place for the implementation of an infrastructure project will take place. It's just going to be outside of competition and outside of quite a bit of the safeguards and accountability mechanisms. Do remember, let me just quickly say to all the Jamaicans here, that the accountability mechanisms that the parliament is depending on, having shared with you already that they don't work, are all what we call ex post facto. It's after the fact. It's after the
Yeah.
money has been spent, the contracts have been signed, and the auditor general comes in maybe a year, 18 months later. Therein lies the concern.
So the CEO decides who the developer is, who the contractor is. I mean, is that really what is intended?
I'm not quite sure the extent to which the minister would be involved and the cabinet would be involved, but certainly, from my reading of the act, the CEO, to a large extent, is where those decisions will rest and abide. Oh, and I should have mentioned, you might have also been hearing a lot about JAMROC. JAMROC is the oversight body that will be created to kind of oversee what is happening here with NaRRA. One of the difficulties I have, and it's not something I can understand, is I keep hearing about JAMROC and I keep looking in the legislation and I can't find anything referring to JAMROC. So I keep hearing our parliamentarians, I keep hearing the reassurances from the Prime Minister about JAMROC providing oversight. Who is this JAMROC? There's no documentation that is available to us that we can find to really see and assess for ourselves what is this oversight committee. It's not in the law. And so if it's not in the law, what does that tell you about what can happen in 6 months or a year?
Okay, there was a Hillary
Hey,
who had her hand up.
DP Stu, before you go, you've been asking a number of questions, and
No,
Wesley's hand,
this is not a
Wesley,
question. I'm
yeah,
referring to Hillary.
okay, but
Hillary.
before, Wesley has had his hand up for a long time.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I didn't say Wesley. I saw Hillary. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Jeanette,
Hi, Wesley.
hi. It seems to me that the mechanisms are not in place to ensure that criminality doesn't take place, that some sort of theft doesn't take place. We should call it what it is, right? The mechanisms are not in place. You would not expect a board, it to be argued that Jamaica Money Market Broker shouldn't have a board or Scotiabank shouldn't have a board because it gets in the way of, the CEO doing their job. I mean, this is just, it's so, I'm not sure what word to use, right? Egregious is a word that, was used earlier. And it seems to me that this part of the problem, I think is that we're in an adversarial system, one party or another. And then people don't really just think what's in it for the people of Jamaica.
Well said.
It's not a political party or a particular leader. It's the people of Jamaica. Are we going to benefit? What best ensure that the benefits, go to the people of Jamaica? And the thing is, I think it's pointless asking each and every one of us to be responsible. If the mechanisms are there in law, there need to be some mechanism to ensure that the law is upheld, right? It's like, people don't, if somebody goes out and rob, an ordinary citizen. They don't, we're not all expected to, ensure that the person is held to account.
Right. Right.
Hello?
Right. At the end of the day, Wesley, I guess that debate that we need to look a little bit closer on, and I think we need to demand that the proponents of this legislation become a little bit more specific. There's been a lot of generalizations in the House. I think they need to really drill down further to be able to convince us of this, but I agree with you. The idea that you can't move quickly and have oversight, I reject it. And I would say to those who are utilizing the New Zealand model, well, take the accountability mechanisms, take the consultation aspects of it as well. It is interesting that the only aspect of that model that I would say currently this bill seems to be recognizing is the one that sifts out all the guardrails and the safeguards. So I'm hoping that the debate, Wesley, in the House of the Senate on Friday is really gonna drill down into real and proper examples rather than what I think are a lot of generalizations as to why what we're asking for can't work.
I'm just wondering if we could get from hoping to demanding, Jeanette.
I didn't get that. Sorry,
I'm
Wesley.
just hoping I'm wondering if we can move from hoping to
The demand.
demanding. Do you understand?
Well,
Because if we're working on behalf of the people of Jamaica,
yeah,
because the sort of money you're talking about, 6 billion, over 6 billion US dollars, that's a lot of money. It's going to take ages to repay it.
yeah,
It doesn't belong to the people who are doing the work or managing it's the people of Jamaica. So
absolutely.
value should go to the
Absolutely.
people of Jamaica, and there should be
And
things in place to ensure that the value goes to the people of Jamaica.
and that is why, and as I started off saying that they work for us, huh? The assets are ours. They are responding to the needs of the people of Jamaica. The money will be paid back by us. The desi any I guess where I'm really heading is the recommendation that JET and JFJ made. The government is concerned that this bill needs to be passed now. And I'm telling you, I'm sure we're all old enough to recognize that when we're being pushed to do something, that's probably when we need to apply the brakes a little bit and look. JFJ and JET has said, can we have a joint select committee? The government says no. Can we have a joint select committee where we have defined the time, like a month? The people in the West are waiting, but can we give it another 2 weeks or 3 weeks to discuss this so that we have the reassurance, so that you take some of our concerns into consideration? You work for us. But that's not what we're seeing. We're really seeing a debate between two political parties, and sometimes it feels like, we're not in the picture. I'm going to say it again, that MPs are representatives. They are there to represent our views. And I'm not so sure of any other mechanism other than the joint select that allows Jamaicans like myself, like everybody here, to be able to say, we're not ready, we're not happy. The Prime Minister has what a democracy gives him, a majority in the House. But I think that this is being bulldozed in a way that it ought not to be if so many concerns from so many quarters exist. I don't know. It's uncomfortable.
Okay. Thanks, Wesley. I'd like to DP Marcel, I see your hand up.
I'm gonna ask for 2 seconds. I'm running out of battery. I'm just gonna grab my charger. So just give me two quick seconds. Yes?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear? Can you hear while you're grabbing it?
No, I can't.
Okay. All right. Marcel, you'll be up next.
And I, based on the time, DP Stewart, I would suggest that DP Marcel be the last question.
Yep. I'm back.
Whoa, what's an honor. Ooh.
I am back. Thank you for that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, Marcel, that's your question. Go ahead.
All right, real quick one. Given the, for me, landmark ruling that just took place,
Yes.
which for me, I think a big thing out of it, it says, and that should be the real big point, that we should not be in a position where a minister in any situation can overrule the competent authorities. No minister should have that power. So I'm saying I did not see this. The question is there any way that, I know you call it, like have some civil action, can the courts, it has shown that the courts independently, right, can really be powerful. Can any approach be made? Is there any way to legally challenge this? I mean, your presentation was so compelling. Is there any way, that's a question, that can be legally challenged what is being foisted upon the country?
The answer is yes. I mean, I am not an attorney at law, but I'm practicing as a civil society advocate long enough to be able to say exactly what you said here. The Dry Harbor case tells you that the Constitutional Court is always there. Unfortunately, and I'm just going to say it because it's the truth, there have been way too many such challenges against the Andrew Holness-led administration. That in and of itself is something that we should not consider when we're looking at this. It's reasonable. A track record matters. The track record of the government in enforcing the law matters, in respecting the existing accountability framework matters. The extent to which how many times we have an administration where the citizens of the country have to find money and time to challenge, or a People's National Party, the opposition has had to find the resources to go and challenge the government only to find out that yes, our rights were violated is concerning, and we should consider that when we're looking at NaRRA. So the answer to your question is absolutely yes, but that takes time. It takes resources, and we do have to respond to the people of Jamaica. The 500,000 is what the Prime Minister says that's waiting. This can't wait on a constitutional challenge. So I'm really hoping that the government will hear the cries of the people and pay us the
Yeah.
respect and respond. And I've just put back up there quickly since I didn't have the time to go through it. But just take a note at the differences now. The Constitutional Court required for Dry Harbor sound evidence-based reason for the reversal of the decision.
Mm-hmm.
NaRRA, you don't have to provide that, yeah? And you don't have to publish a reason. Oh my
Whoa.
Lord, guys, you don't have to tell Jamaica why.
Why?
How is oh my goodness. The Constitutional Court for Dry Harbor recognized that the reason had to be explained to the public. The NaRRA bill doesn't require that. Doesn't have to be published. The affected people, the Constitutional Court is saying, you needed to have given the people a chance to speak. We don't see anything in the bill now that says that you have a right to make any representations to the authority. You certainly can to the court. And you can see the rest of them there. So thank you for raising Dry Harbor again. It's a good note to end on. And can I just say it? God is good. Because I really believe that this ruling has come at a time that is not coincidental. There's a coincidence is God acting anonymously. No. I believe that this is providential, and I believe that this is divine intervention, not just for the people of Jamaica, but for the government to look and say, boy, hold on a minute. I've read this judgment. I have
Yes.
learned from the past. Let me do things differently. No, instead, we have a government that's doubling down and will make it harder because this time it's in law for us to challenge it. Yeah, yeah.
And we say amen.
Okay, Janet, as we hand back to the president, let me just say this first. The Senate takes it on is the Senate hearing a one-day thing?
Uh,
Or
well,
we don't know?
yes, to be honest with you, again, the democracy, it says that it's going to be a vote, and we already know, just like the lower house, that the majority lies with the government, and that's the only way it can be. We couldn't run a country any other way. But I want those of us who are here to take heart. Take heart from the Dry Harbor case study, but take heart from what happened with NIDS. With NIDS, it
I
was a
thought of it.
similar situation where, the Senate did not take the approach of, well, you know something, the government have the majority now and the House don't vote, so you know what? When we go there, I go just say a little thing and just go on my yard because I can't stop this. No, you know what the Senate did? I was in the House. That Senate came and they doubled down. I mean, they fought and they gave all the argumentation that they could. But do you know what the government did? The government responded. So I'm asking us to put our democracy to the test. And one of the things I want to do in closing is to invite every single solitary of the 125 of us. If you can ask for the time off, ask for it. And those of us who can take the time off, let us be in the Senate on Friday. It says something very powerful when our legislators look up and see the human bodies in that space saying, I have an interest in this, and I came down here because I want to hear it. That is what happened with NIDS. I know the legislators looked up and it made a difference. It created a shift. So I am putting out a plea to everyone here who can be at the Senate 10 o'clock. Well, they might start a little late, but 10 o'clock on Friday. See if you can be in the House to really make your presence felt and to send a message that this is really important to us and it can't be left up to the lawmakers alone.
Thank you. Thank you. Back to President Zuri.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to invite DP Rupert Whitaker to do the official thank you to our presenter, Ms. Calder.
Thank you, President Johnson. I appreciate it. Thank you, Hillary.
Well, I'm here, Pres, trying to take in everything that has been said. This evening has been an amazing evening, an amazing presentation,
Bless God.
compelling,
Thank you.
attention grabbing, well received by those of us who are here. And Lady Jeanette, we just want to tell you that we appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
I've heard of you and I've seen you in the media, but
Okay.
I realize why you are who you are, because being an architect, you not only know how to be precise in using tools, but precise in using and explaining the language of things. And we
Never heard that
understood what you
before.
were saying. And
Thank you.
on behalf of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston and all of us who are here, over 100 of us are here, we just want to tell you thanks. I don't know if I can make it down, but I'm going to try to make it down. I haven't been down there in a while, but
Thank you.
this is something, and while you were speaking, I know that New Zealand is one of the least corrupt countries in the world. In fact,
That's a good
they were
point.
number 4 among the least, and we were 70 odd among the least, way above us. If we're gonna learn, let's follow. It is said that democracy strives better in the dark when our hands are probably tied. We want to make this country a better place, and thank you for enlightening us. We have something special for you. I hope when DP Stewart is gonna be taking it, I can accompany him so that I can invite you to speak at another place. But thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lord bless you and keep you. You did yourself proud, and you have educated us tonight. Thank you. Thank you. If you're nearby, we probably would have given you a water to drink.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. And I just want to really also say thank you to Jet and JFJ, who really, I'm standing on the shoulders of some of the work that they have already done and have been doing as it relates to this bill. So I really thank you for the attention and the opportunity to really have shared tonight. And I'm looking out for everybody. Let's go stand for Jamaica on Friday. God bless you all. Thank you.